Now, I can't wait for you all to see that movie. Cooties is such a lot of fun. Comes out on 12th of October from Universal on DVD and Blu-ray. Please welcome the star, the producer of Cooties, Mr. Elijah Wood.
Hello, y'all.
So, Elijah, before we get to Cooties, tell us how you started out in the industry.
Oh, right. Jesus. It's like, when were you born? Take us back. I started when I was 8 years old. I had been living in Iowa. I was born in Iowa. And my mom, as the story goes, my mom saw a television commercial one day, and I was 5 at the time, and she was like, that would be fun for Elijah to do. I had a lot of energy as a child, so she was like, that would be a great outlet for his energy. Anyway, long story short, we ended up in Los Angeles. I met a talent manager there, and he asked me if I wanted to become an actor. I was 7 at the time, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So we went out to Los Angeles to sort of just try out auditioning to see how it would go during pilot season, and within the first 6 weeks of auditioning, I got my first job in a Paula Abdul music video.
Which one?
Forever Your Girl,
Okay.
which was actually directed by David Fincher before he started making movies. I know, really funny. And then I got a small role in a film in Back to the Future 2.
Back to the Future 2.
Yeah, a hell of a first movie to be in. Jesus. And I just fell in love with it, like kind of instantly, and I've been doing it ever since.
And then it obviously evolved into bigger roles, didn't it, down the line? So again, take us through how that emerged and how that evolved.
Well, yeah, I guess the first relatively significant role I had in a movie was in Barry Levinson's Avalon. And, I was 8 at the time, and the sort of responsibility of playing that character wasn't lost on me, and somehow I had this sense of understanding that responsibility and portraying a character. And I think from there, as I got older, because I never went to school for it, I didn't go to acting school. I didn't really have a trainer, so my experience was always learning as I was going, kind of, mixed with an intuition. It's so funny to think about it now because I infuse my thoughts as an adult into what I must have been thinking then. I can't really tell you what I was thinking beyond the fact that I had an understanding of what it was that I was doing and really loved it. And the older I got, the more passionate about it I became. And I think as I delved into my teens, a real turning point for me was a movie by Ang Lee called The Ice Storm, which provided an opportunity to an approach that was more, I don't know, it was more all-inclusive in a way that I'd ever experienced. There was a real, it was like a week-long rehearsal period. Each of the actors were given packets of information about the 70s to sort of familiarize themselves with the time. Each actor was given a questionnaire for their characters to fill out, which was just so interesting. And delving into a role and to an experience in a far more detailed way than I had before made a real impression on me. So I think that provided a turning point from the way that I looked at acting, but also I think in filmmaking in general.
You've also been involved in so many great genre films over the years, everything from obviously The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and The Faculty, Sin City, Grand Piano, Maniac.
Yeah.
Incredible. Is that something that's always been a passion of yours?
I guess it has. I mean, I love genre cinema. I always have. I grew up loving horror films. Some of my earliest memories of watching movies are of watching horror films.
What were the ones that really kind of sparked your
early ones would have been
interest?
Gremlins, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Written by Mike DeLuca, I think, that one. Really, that was a big one for me. A really big one is a lesser-known film called Truth or Dare, A Critical Madness. You've probably... No? Oh, it was a direct-to-VHS horror film. The 80s was populated by direct-to-VHS horror and genre. And this was one of them. And I saw it when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, because my brother is 7 years older than me, so I always benefited from that, because he would rent movies with his friends and then bring them home, show them to me unbeknownst to my mom. So I had this really wonderful horror education, despite the fact that I wasn't supposed to. So yeah, I don't know. I've always been attracted to genre. And as far as... It's funny, I think with those films, Maniac or Sin City, there's always a little bit of an organic reason for it as well, despite the fact that I love genre. Like Sin City, I was just such a huge fan of Frank Miller's graphic novels and loved working with Rodriguez. So that, like, the synergy of that and getting a chance to occupy a space within that world that Frank Miller had created was just an awesome opportunity. And to play a cannibalistic killer was awesome. And then with Maniac, it was, for me, as much as it was exciting to play a villain in the context of a horror film, I don't really like remakes. But what was really fascinating about that film was that it was really taking a different approach and making it a POV film. And so for me as an actor, the opportunity to play a character that you rarely see was terribly exciting, and created an opportunity for an approach that was so different from anything I'd ever done before. Largely, it was voiceover, and I was on set all the time, but not on camera. And it was just an interesting...
How many of you have seen Maniac, the remake of Maniac? So there's a few. Yeah, you should check it out. It's a hardcore movie, isn't it?
It's
a
really hardcore.
Yeah,
it doesn't
brutal.
really. It doesn't pull any punches in regards to the graphic violence, but I also find that movie to be very beautiful. It manages to be both, from the grindhouse sort of realm, but with a really sort of cinematic, beautiful approach.
So from the acting, how did you get into producing with the Specter Vision company?
Yeah, so I guess, having acted for as long as I have, I think really since my 20s, I've become... I just love the process of making movies. I love cinema. I have been a part of that process for 26, 27 years. So I love every aspect of it. And I think for a while, especially as I got into my 20s, I started thinking about wanting to be a part of filmmaking from a different angle and to facilitate filmmakers that I really loved and to facilitate stories that I wanted to see get made. So that had been like bouncing in my head for a while, be it directing or producing. And I met my producing partners, Josh and Daniel, on another project entirely, something that Daniel was going to write or had written and that Josh was going to direct. And we were constantly meeting about this project, which was like a comedy. It wasn't a horror movie at all. And we realized that we became really close friends, and then B, we realized we had this shared mutual love of horror and genre film. And it all just kind of organically came together for me. It sort of clicked, like, this is what I want to do. It was about 5 to 6 years ago. So if you imagine, like, I think we're kind of in a pretty amazing time right now for genre and horror, internationally and within the United States. But at the time, 5 to 6 years ago, especially for the US, it didn't seem like it was a particular... that there was a wellspring of good films being made. There was always an exception. Something like Ty West's House of the Devil is extraordinary, but there wasn't like a place where these kinds of films, movies that take the genre seriously, have a cinematic approach, care about character and story, where a lot of these movies were being made in Europe, things like Let the Right One In or The Orphanage, even Martyrs out of France. So that was kind of our impetus. We were sort of both in love with the genre, but also inspired to create a space that we felt didn't exist. And so that was kind of it. And
tell us specifically about the Cooties project.
Yeah.
How did that...
So Cooties was actually an idea that Josh, my producing partner Josh, had. And it was really early on, like as we were starting the company, or even maybe before we had officially started the company, he had this idea, which I freaked out for. He was like, I have this idea for a movie called Cooties, and it's about zombie children that are only zombified if they haven't gone through puberty. And you're like, that's fucking awesome. How has that never been made before? How is there not a movie in the 80s or the 70s, some exploitation comedy called Cooties? Like, that sounds like a trauma movie. You know what I mean? So we were shocked that it had never been done. The idea then got communicated through a mutual friend to Leigh Whannell, who created Saw and Insidious. And Leigh freaked out for it and wanted to meet us. And so we met with him. And our idea for the movie initially, which I find really funny now, is that we wanted to take it really seriously. We wanted to make like a serious horror movie without any comedy called Cooties. And we were really inspired by a great Spanish horror movie called Who Can Kill a Child. I'm sure you know it. It's a great movie. Seek it out. It's awesome. Killer children. But we sat with Leigh, and Leigh was like, this is the movie I want to make. It's a comedy. And we were like, oh, we kind of wanted to make a serious horror movie. And he was like, guys, it's called Cooties. We're like, oh, yeah, it is. And then it was his idea to co-write it with Ian Brennan, the co-creator of Glee. So the two of them spec'd it for us.
And tell us a little bit about your character.
Clint Hadson. Yeah, he's an aspiring horror novelist who probably should pick a better vocation because he's not very good at it. And the movie starts with him you meet him having returned home from New York City, where he had sort of tried to make it big as a writer, and it didn't quite work for him. So he's back in his childhood bedroom, living with his mom, and he's a substitute teacher. Yep. And so we meet all of the central characters through Clint's eyes as he goes back to the school that he attended when he was a kid. And his friend from when he was a kid, Lucy, played by Alison Pill, is a teacher there as well. And you sort of meet all these characters through Clint.
Was it always your intention to be in the film?
No. Not at all. Yeah, not at all. Primarily because in starting Specter Vision, my interest was only to produce, and I was really conscious of not wanting the label to appear like it was a vanity project for me or a way that I could provide a conduit for my work as an actor. I really wanted those lines to be relatively separate. I felt very strongly about that. So I was really against the idea of playing a character in the movie. And then I ultimately was forced. Kind of. But it would have, in hindsight, I'm really glad I did it. It was so much fun. And in hindsight, like, it was pretty silly. I think I was just, I always come from a place of integrity. So every decision I make, I want it to be the right decision. And ultimately it doesn't matter. I'm really glad I did it. I had a blast, and it would have been such a bummer to miss out on the fun opportunity. For us, it felt like summer camp. We shot in July 2 years ago at a school in Los Angeles. And we were at that school for 4 weeks. It was awesome. It was so much fun. And to go to set with, Rainn Wilson and Nassim Pedrad and Leigh, we were constantly laughing. It was ridiculous.
And how did the kids react to all the gore? I bet they loved it.
They loved it.
Wow, yeah, cool.
They loved it. It was like Halloween for them every day. They loved it. It was awesome.
Okay, has anybody out there got any questions for Elijah? Put your hand up if you have. Manda.
Hello. Hey.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick question. Would you have any tips for someone just trying to get into the producing business, trying to make it that way? What would you advise yourself if you were just starting out?
It's a good question. Well, for us, we had no fucking clue what it meant to start a production company. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally, we were super naive. By just calling it a company is basically how we started. You know what I mean? The three of us got together in my friend Josh's apartment with, like, some whiskey, and we started talking about the kinds of movies that we wanted to make, and sort of, effectively wrote a mission statement for, like, spiritually what we wanted to try and achieve at its best, and then like a list of the kinds of films that we wanted to explore. That was it. From there, I suppose there are many different ways we could have gone, and our choice, for better or worse, but ultimately for better, was that we decided to just reach out to people in the creative community. So we had a really specific idea of what the identity of the company was. And that was the jumping off point that then led us to just meet with people in the creative community, writers, directors, people that might have this kind of material we were looking for. And our lead-in for them, which I think was really attractive at the time, was, do you have a project that is in this sort of horror genre space that you can't get traction with anyone else, that the studios aren't interested in it, these production companies aren't interested in it, they like it, but they're not willing to take the risk. Those are the projects we want. And that's very exciting to people in the creative community, because it's like, oftentimes the door is closed on the things that are a little bit weirder or a little bit harder to define. And we were like, if it's hard to define and weird, we want it. So in doing that, it created a kind of a wellspring of material really fast. We managed to get, we had attached ourselves to probably 8 to 10 different things within a year and a half to 2 years, which was pretty extraordinary, because it's really hard to find good material anyway. But by taking that approach, we were able to sort of endear ourselves to fellow artists as a safe place, and a place that would garner the kinds, support the kinds of things that weren't being supported. So that was our approach. The thing we didn't think about was, how do we run a business? That didn't occur to us. And we're now having to reverse engineer that part. But we did it with no company overhead, with no employees. It was just the three of us. We were like the Lincoln Lawyer of film companies. We just ran it out of coffee shops and our houses and apartments. So I don't know if that's advice, but I'm just explaining that's how we did it without knowing how to do it. We just went completely on instinct and purely from an artistic perspective. And I think that is always going to end up, one of the things that is sort of a sort of guiding principle for us too is that we're not transactional as producers. And again, this is for better or worse. Oftentimes, what I mean by transactional is we're not looking to check off boxes when we read material. So most producers, if they're financially minded, which I suppose they should be, will look at a script and they'll check off a variety of boxes that they think that film, if they make it, it will succeed and they'll make their money back based on their investment, right? We don't do that at all. But what that does for us is that it gives us a pretty incredible list of great scripts and really good material. So I would, it's probably terrible advice if you want to run a successful company. But that is what works for us. And it's important in terms of our identity that we never think transactionally, that we always have a heart response. And then we try and bend reality to make it work, is sort of how we operate.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Anybody else out there? It's difficult for us to see. Somebody
It's like, has anyone seen A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night?
Yes,
She
amazing
has.
film.
That's a really good example of, in a way, for us, we look at that film as like the prime, at its best example of what we want to represent ourselves. And that movie on paper is a nightmare. Like, from a producing standpoint, looking at that, it's in Farsi, it's in black and white, it's a period film. There's a genre element, but it's not really a horror film. It's not really a love story. It's like, but man, that film's extraordinary, and we are so proud to be a part of it. And so that's a good example. We also just produced a movie. You know Jim Hosking, right? Yeah. We just produced a movie called The Greasy Strangler. That's another one of those things.
The Greasy Strangler.
Have you read it? Do you know the script?
No.
Oh, fuck. Wow. I have a cut of it to watch. I need to watch. But The Greasy Strangler, again, one of those things. On paper, no one would fucking touch that movie. And Ant Timpson, who you know, Ant Timpson is a producer friend, and he lives in New Zealand. Produced such great things as Deathgasm and what's the haunted house film that was so good? Housebound. Housebound. Anybody see Housebound? ABCs of Death. Come on, you guys.
You've got some amazing films to watch.
Oh my God, yeah, totally. So Ant contacted me and he was like, "I've got this really ridiculous script from Jim Hosking. You got to read it. I think it'll be up your alley." And it's so fucked up and so funny. And I was like, "We're doing it."
I think the microphone's there with a lady somewhere.
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, that's really loud. You say about how much you love horror films, and my question for you is, would you ever consider writing a horror film, or at least co-writing a horror film? And if you did, what would it be about?
Ooh, good question. Really hard questions, you guys. You're really... It's good. Well, I don't really fancy myself a writer. I don't know if I trust my writing abilities. Co-writing something is interesting. I always wanted to tell, although it feels like it's been done so much recently, is a really good ghost story. But I feel like it's been done pretty well over the last number of years. It's been a relatively well-mined genre. But it's still something that really fascinates me, because I think we all have a relationship to the paranormal on some level, be it a fear of it, or our own personal experiences, or friends that have had experiences. And some of my favorite movies are ghost films, you know, from The Innocents to, what's that wonderful George C. Scott film, The Changeling. Has anyone seen The Changeling? Oh, fuck, it's so good.
And The Haunting.
Yeah, The Haunting's brilliant.
The Orphanage.
The Orphanage. Yes,
So
I'm
many.
drawn, there's so many, but I'm really drawn to ghost films. So it might be a different take on that.
And what about directing? Would you ever want to get into directing?
I would love to.
What's
love to.
stopping
I feel
you?
like I don't know. I don't know myself. My priorities. Get it together, Wood. It's literally myself. I think it's a thing where I need to just prioritize that as I need to start looking for material and because I would love to. In a lot of ways, I feel like I've been going to film school for the last 37 years and.
And are there any directors? Obviously, you've worked with so many amazing people over the years. Is there anybody you'd like to work with to be directed by acting? Director,
I think Jeremy Saulnier is an extraordinary filmmaker. Has anyone seen Blue Ruin? Y'all better be writing these movies down.
And his new one, Green Room.
Green Room is
amazing.
So good. I'm obsessed with The Witch, Robert Eggers' films. I'd love to work. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. So I'd love to work with him. I'd love to work with Ben Wheatley. Has anyone seen Kill List? Sightseers, yeah. So, what's next for you apart from the Cooties project? What can we look forward to seeing you in? The next thing to come out will be The Last Witch Hunter, which is the kind of action fantasy Vin Diesel movie.
When's it out?
Witches.
Is there a date for it?
It's October 23rd in the States, and it might be the same here. Is it the same? It's the same. And then I did a movie earlier this year with Nicolas Cage called The Trust, which is a sort of two-hander heist movie. Okay. We both play cops, but we work in evidence management, like the lowest rung of the cop world. Right. And we seize an opportunity to, we find a vault, and we take this opportunity to perform a heist, but we're not seasoned at that. So it's a kind of comedy drama. It's really great, and the opportunity to work with Nick Cage was such a gift.
How was he
I
to work
adore
with?
him. I love him. It's one of my favorite experiences working with another actor, and one of the first times where I've really, truly had many out-of-body experiences whilst working opposite someone. Look, I've been so lucky to work with so many incredible actors, both known and unknown. But he's one of these dudes that just sort of got this legendary status for me, and I've always loved his work. And there would just be these moments where we'd be in the middle of a scene, and in my head I'd be like, "That's Nick Cage," you know. So like the way he just said that was so Nick Cage. It was so awesome, so awesome. I was just giddy every day. It was so great, and he's brilliant. You know, he's obviously been working for a very long time, but has not lost an ounce of vitality. Still so interested, still loves the work. He was on set all the time. He was also super keen to hear about new filmmakers. I'd recommend films to him, and he'd go home on the weekend and watch them and come back on Monday and be like, "I watched Strange Color of Your Body's Tears. That was wild, man." Like, yes! I tried to convince him to go to Fantastic Fest, which he's actually really keen to do.
In disguise.
He just wants to go. He's like, I'll stay at the Four Seasons, and then I'll go and watch movies all day. I was like, yeah, they'll be happy to receive you. So that'll probably come out sometime next year. And then we've got a bunch of films in production. We're making a movie called Bad Vibes, which is like a psychedelic werewolf movie. We're shooting in Austin in January. And then there's a movie that we're doing with Richard Stanley that's a H.P. Lovecraft adaptation called Color Out of Space. And Richard Stanley is a crazy, mad genius. He's really wonderful, and I'm so excited to be a part of him coming back to cinema because it's been a while.
So we're going to show you guys another couple of clips from Cooties. You must make sure you check it out when it comes out on DVD.
Check it out. It's really fun. You don't have to love horror to love it. It helps. But it's really funny, and it's pretty bloody. And Leigh Whannell is a revelation in this film.
You're going to love it.
He's so fucking funny. It's great.
Absolutely. We could talk all night.
Yeah, we could.
And we will be over at the Prince Charles in a little while. We're going to show Cooties. And in
Is
the
anyone
meantime,
coming to the screening?
yes, a whole little pocket of folks over there.
Okay, great.
So thank you so much. Put your hands together for Mr. Elijah Wood.